Something strange is happening in the animation world. Your favorite shows are wrapping up left and right. Series that seemed unstoppable are suddenly announcing their final seasons. Studios are closing chapters faster than ever before. And if you're wondering why this is happening now, you're not alone. Let's get in. Anime movies aren't just doing well anymore. They're taking over, shoving entire Hollywood franchises out of the way and claiming the throne like they always belong there. And nothing proved that louder than the explosion of Demon Slayer's Infinity Castle. That film didn't just break records, it obliterated them. Infinity Castle walked into theaters and instantly dominated the US like it was nothing. A $70 million opening weekend in America alone. Anime used to beg for a few theater screens, now it's bulldozing blockbuster giants on their home turf, smashing Mugen Train's record like it was a warm-up. For years, people said anime films couldn't compete with Hollywood. They were wrong then. Now they look delusional. Infinity Castle is proof that anime is entering a new era. Bigger, louder, and far more dangerous to anyone in its way. But before we talk about the future, you have to understand how unreal this shift is. Because anime films didn't start like this. Back then, anime movies rarely hit US theaters. If they did, it was one weekend, one showtime, in one random city. Most releases went straight to home video. The American market didn't take anime seriously unless the name was Pokemon or Studio Ghibli. And even then, those were exceptions, not a trend. Pokemon. The first movie was the only anime film in history to dominate the US box office. That record stood untouched for over 20 years. Ghibli movies got more attention, but that was because Miyazaki is basically animation royalty, not because anime as a whole was mainstream. Anime fans were loud, but the box office didn't reflect that yet. Everything changed with Mugen Train. That movie hit the world like a meteor. It became the first anime film since Pokemon to top the US box office, and did it during a pandemic. Then it passed Spirited Away and became Japan's highest grossing movie ever. That was the moment studios realized the truth. Anime movies aren't niche anymore. They're global events. And Infinity Castle just pushed that truth even further. Because Infinity Castle showed something terrifying for Hollywood. Anime movies don't need $200 million budgets to crush the box office. Infinity Castle costs around $20 million. That's nothing in movie terms. Hollywood spends that much just to feed the production crew. Yet Demon Slayer earned more in a single weekend than huge Western franchises made in months. It's embarrassing for Hollywood, but a dream for Japanese studios. And here's where the future gets wild. Anime companies now know that fans will show up hard for big canon movies. Not filler, not side quests, not bonus adventures. Fans want actual story arcs brought to theaters. Mugen Train proved it. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 proved it. Infinity Castle sealed the deal permanently. This one rule will shape the future of anime movies. If the story arc matters, fans will flood theaters like it's the opening night of Avengers. Studios have taken notes. That's why we're getting movies covering the next big chapters of chainsaw fights, curses, demons, and whatever chaos is coming next. And this isn't slowing down. Because demand isn't slowing down. In fact, it's rising so fast that it's forcing every studio to rethink how they release their biggest arcs. And that's where the real future starts to reveal itself. If studios are smart, and trust me, they're watching these numbers like hawks, they're going to lean into this new formula hard. Because right now, anime films are outperforming superhero movies, outperforming live-action remakes, and in some cases outperforming entire franchises that used to dominate without even trying. And it's not just the money, it's the hype. Infinity Castle proved that fans don't just want these movies, they treat them like cultural events. And this has consequences. The moment anime becomes mainstream enough to attract major Hollywood voices, that's when the Oscars start calling. Fans are already shouting that Infinity Castle deserves a nomination. A few years ago, that would have been a joke. Today, not so much. Source: the more anime films dominate the global box office, the harder it becomes for award shows to ignore them. They can't pretend these movies are too niche when they're outperforming their own nominees. Awards won't change because they want to. They'll change because they'll look out of touch if they don't. But this future goes deeper because anime studios aren't just going to make more movies, they're going to restructure how they tell stories. For decades, anime series followed a simple rule. Major arcs are for TV. Movies are optional bonuses. That rule is dead. Now, the biggest arcs, the most emotional battles, the wildest finales, those are moving straight to theaters. Why? Because movies make way more money than weekly episodes. Fans want higher animation quality. Studios want higher profits. And movies give them both. And the strategy goes even further than that. You're going to see more compilation films, early episodes from new seasons edited into polished theatrical releases. Jujutsu Kaisen did it. Dan DaDon did it. And it works. Imagine how much hype a show gets when fans can watch an entire arc early on a cinema screen instead of waiting week to week. Studios love this model because they get a box office boost before the season even airs. It's free money. You think they're going to stop? Absolutely not. And this leads to the craziest possibility of all. The one that would shatter everything we know about anime movies. Because if Demon Slayer can take a major canon arc and turn it into a box office monster, if Jujutsu Kaisen can take a prequel arc and turn it into a global hit, then you know what's next, right? We are heading toward the era of franchise-ending movie trilogies. Not TV finales, not 2-episode specials, full-scale theatrical conclusions. Why wouldn't they? The formula works. Infinity Castle is only part 1 of 3. Studios are watching closely. If this trilogy ends up dominating every metric the way it's expected to, the message will be impossible to ignore. Big arcs belong on the biggest screens, and fans will absolutely show up for that. Now imagine how far this could go if the biggest shonen of all time joined the movement. Because if one legendary series took its final arc and turned it into a movie saga, we might see box office records explode in a way nobody is prepared for. And that brings us to the monster waiting in the shadows, the one franchise that could flip the entire industry upside down if it ever followed Demon Slayer's path. Because let's be honest, if One Piece ever decides to end its story with a full-blown theatrical trilogy, it's over. Not just for anime, for every movie trying to compete. Think about the absolute chaos that would erupt the moment Toei Animation announces that Luffy's final journey, Laugh Tale, the mysteries of the Void Century, and the truth of the One Piece is going to hit theaters instead of TV. Websites wouldn't just crash, they'd explode. Pre-sales would break every record ever made. Fans would camp outside cinemas like it's a life or death mission. And the hype wouldn't be limited to anime fans. Even casual audiences who haven't watched a single episode would rush in just to be part of the moment. But that's exactly why Infinity Castle is so important. It's the proof the industry needed, the spark that lights the next wave. And the studios are watching all of this with wide eyes because the message is too loud to ignore. Anime no longer needs to follow Hollywood's rules. It can build its own box office empire. And honestly, Hollywood needs anime now more than anime needs Hollywood. Look at the movie landscape today. Superhero fatigue, sequels nobody asked for, giant budgets that barely break even. Meanwhile, anime is pulling insane numbers with a fraction of the cost. Demon Slayer made more than 25 times its budget back. That's not a movie. That's a money printer dressed as a film. Studios everywhere are taking notes, and the changes are coming fast. We're entering an era where anime films will take bigger creative risks, adapt major canon arcs, expand into multi-film sagas, cast mainstream Hollywood actors, push for awards and recognition, dominate global charts, and bring anime storytelling to places we've never seen before. And what's even scarier? This is only the beginning. Infinity Castle is part 1 of 3. The hype will only get louder. The numbers will only get higher. And once the trilogy hits its final act, and fans walk into theaters knowing they're about to witness the end of one of the biggest anime stories of this generation, that emotional punch is going to echo across the entire industry. Because when an anime finale becomes a worldwide event, when crowds scream in theaters, when fans cry, cheer, and stand up like they're part of the battle, that energy becomes impossible to ignore. It forces studios to adapt. It pushes the medium forward. It changes everything. And soon, anime movies won't just be popular, they'll be unavoidable. They'll be the new blockbuster standard. They'll be the films that take over release calendars, dethrone giant franchises, and grab every conversation online. Infinity Castle didn't just succeed, it opened the door. And now the future of anime movies looks bigger, louder, and more unstoppable than ever. The next generation of anime films is coming, and after this, there's no going back. Just make sure you subscribe the channel and add a comment what kind of content you will love to see. We will come back with a great story, review, explanation, or what if soon. So subscribe, be the part of Animelogy. And if you liked the video, then liked and shared it too. Bye bye.